Hello world, this is Shruti Pandey, and today I have with me somebody from across the seas rather, who has been a legend for the past 15 years in mastering the technical sales and helping create pre-sales leader. And I didn't want India to miss out on this opportunity. So it's an immense honor and pleasure of mine to host you on my podcast, John. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm thrilled to be here. I have a great deal of love for India in my heart. I've been there a few times, and obviously, being English, I understand cricket and I love the food. So let's have a good time.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you've been really kind and gracious to accept this invite from me. So it means even more a lot and very warming, actually. I hope I keep the responsibility of representing my country all right today.
Sure.
It's like a little bit of that for me, but thank you once again for being such a gracious guest. I want to understand your journey in this interview today, and I want to understand you had an amazing career right after passing or graduating from your Imperial College of London, if I were to say. And you were doing all great in the journey. And what really made you to start with MTS, mastering the technical sales 15 years back? Like, what provoked you, instigated you, or like, why did you feel like taking that up and creating something for us?
Sure. So provoked, I think, is a very good word. And actually, the genesis of the company is more than 20 years old. So I'd been an SE leader for a while, and I was really frustrated that nobody provided training for me and my team.
Yeah.
So 20 years ago, a little bit more than that, I'm sitting in a windowless ballroom in a hotel in Atlanta, Georgia, in the US, southern US, going through solution selling, sales process training for what felt like the third or fourth time in my life. There was maybe 100 salespeople in the room and about 40 sales engineers who worked for me.
Right.
And it was a week-long training, and it was terrible because I turned to one of the ladies sitting next to me, who's one of my reports. I said, "Why are we here? It's 5 days of training. Only a day and a half of it is relevant to us as sales engineers, and we can absorb it 3 times quicker than all these salespeople in the room." And she just turned and looked at me and said, "If you're so smart, why don't you write a book about it?" And I said, "That is a great idea." So all these books you see behind me, right? Now you've got the main book back there and everything. That was the genesis of the book. So I left the room, spoke with one of my peers who also wanted to write a book, had some contacts in the publishing industry, and the very first edition of Mastering Technical Sales came out in 2001. That was right when .com went .crash.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a great time to start up a business. So I stayed in the corporate world for a few years and then started up Mastering Technical Sales for real, just because I felt there was a need for somebody to provide professional skills training to sales engineers. I never, ever expected it to become what it is today. And that's kind of humbling. I mean, now there are a bunch of people in the company. We deliver across the globe in all kinds of different languages. My clients take me to wonderful places. And who would have thought it just from sitting in that room 20 years ago? So yes, I was provoked to go back 2 or 3 minutes.
I think it was just my intuitive self, because I didn't realize, and I don't usually use such words, but I think it was a little bit of that instigation or provocation that literally led to writing of the book and making good things happen. Because somewhere, down the memory lane, as you were traversing through your story, you reminded me of not a very long time ago, 2019, when I took up the crazy challenge of getting into solutions engineering, where in India we still didn't have the idea of what is pre-sales or solutions engineer is or are. And I know how frustrating that can be, but it's always amazing to be the first person and then try things out. But again, if there is some guidance, some help, and if this has been in the arena for like 20 years, 25 years, we can actually exchange notes and take help from each other, right? It doesn't matter where we are. Like, thank you to the .com that now we have internet everywhere. Why not make the most of it? So it absolutely makes sense. And thanks to the lady for asking you to write a book. And thank God you wrote that.
Well, thank you.
Thank God you wrote that. So I want to understand, from you, like who better a person I can ask this? What really is a sales engineer? I have been honing this hat for a while now, but still I'm asking, for the greater good, what is a sales engineer and why is there a need for it? Like, do we even need sales engineers or solutions engineers?
Sure. Uh, So what is a sales engineer? It's kind of one of those like metaphysical questions. It's really hard to define. I call it the cocktail party question. You go to a party and someone says, what do you do? And someone says, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm an engineer, I'm a mechanic. And everyone knows what that is. And you say, well, I'm a sales engineer. And you start speaking and their eyes just glaze over and they say, oh, I have to go top up my drink, and they leave you. So it's tough. So what is a sales engineer? So a sales engineer is really the technical and business partner of a salesperson who is selling a product or a service to another individual or a company. So if you think of it like an analogy, so think of a big company like an Oracle or a Cisco or an HP, they have salespeople, right? And those salespeople are supposed to go out and build relationships and sell stuff. But most of those salespeople are great at building relationships. They're great at shaking hands and buying people food and asking questions. What they don't know very much about is the technology that they're selling or how that technology solves business problems. So where the sales engineer comes in is the sales engineer wears multiple hats, right? They have the technical abilities to understand how the product works and to demonstrate it. They have the professional skills to be able to communicate clearly, and they have the business skills to be able to link the technology back to the business. So that is what a sales engineer is you think of a sales engineer being the partner, right? Not the servant, but the partner of a salesperson going in, selling. I deal with technology. It's not even always technology. And technology is a wide span. So it can be software, it can be hardware, medical devices, solar panels, professional services, all kinds of things. So that's what an SE is, a sales engineer. And there are 50 different words for what we do, right? The sales engineer, solution architect, business consultant, customer success, customer engineer. But fundamentally, that's what it is.
So is there really a need for it? Like, I know you answered the question already in there, but there are some people who really want to have the nail hit on the coffin and they won't understand until we say it out loud. So why is there a need for such a partner in crime at all?
Well, so let's look at that from the viewpoint of the most important person in this whole situation, which is the customer. Right? Yeah. So the customer who is buying stuff right from you. So customers actually believe, and we have the data to back this up, that it is the sales engineer who provides the most value to them and their team as you go through the sales process. Individual contributors, particularly in IT, believe that the sales engineer is about 2.5 times more valuable than the salesperson, and even the executives from the vendor. Middle management about twice as valuable, and even the executives from the companies that you're selling to believes that overall the sales engineer provides more value and they trust them more than the salesperson. So really the demand is from the customers saying, no, we want to speak to somebody who's both technical, who understands the business, that we can trust, that can communicate clearly, and isn't trying to sell us every single minute of the day.
Absolutely. You reminded me of many instances for me, but I'm pretty sure you would have had more of them where, we are all in the call and somebody's trying to be salesy. That can be any person in the room or on the call. And the client is eagerly waiting to talk to a solutions engineer. And they are like, okay, when do we get to her? When do we get to him? Whoever the SE or the solution architect or whatever names with which we go through, get on the call. It reminded me of exactly those moments where people are like, okay, when do we get to her?
You're right. And Don Carmichael, who's kind of one of the other shining stars and gurus in the pre-sales industry, he has a quote. He says, the unofficial title for a sales engineer is the person the customer really wants to speak with.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And that's kind of the little tagline underneath your title. So, yeah, totally agree with what you're saying there.
Like when is she going to speak? When is he going to speak? Like when do we cut the
Exactly. Yeah.
presentation
Stop.
and get to
I
the
don't want to. I don't want to see all those marketing slides. Right. Tell me about your product. Yes,
yes,
that's it. Yeah.
that's it. That's it. So I want to understand another aspect of this, which while we were talking a little while earlier, I think is a little controversial, but needs to be addressed. Like it's the elephant in the room. So
Mhm.
sometimes anybody can be insecure. It could be an SE or it could be the account executive we are pairing with. And anybody could be good, like the SE could be good or the AE could be extremely good. And when we have such blurred lines, I want to understand if an SE becomes too good in their task. And of course, we are supposed to build some relationship. Otherwise, how do we hand hold the entire process of deploying things and making things work? Do you think that in any near possible future can eliminate the need of having that sales partner in crime? Are we like threats to salespeople? Is maybe the bottom line question.
So the brief non-podcast answer is no. We are not a threat, and here's why. One, I would challenge the issue that a sales engineer can get too good.
Mhm.
I mean, there are plenty of people. I mean, I am now, tough to believe, looking at this baby face, in my 4th decade of being around sales engineering, and I still learn something new every day.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the thrill of the job, actually, is you get exposed to new things every day.
Yeah.
So a sales engineer can be good or excellent. I don't think they can ever be too good. It's like telling one of your great spin bowlers out there in India, like, no, you're too good, like we're not going to let you bowl anymore. It doesn't work that
Doesn't
way,
work.
right? Like,
Yeah.
stop bowling those leg breaks. So I challenge that, but kind of get to the meat of your question. Having been on the other side, so I have in my career also been an IT executive and kind of CIO of a company here in the US. The best teams are when you have an account executive and a sales engineer working together in tandem, and
Right.
it's professional, and they're in the room. It's almost like working with a married couple, where they're like finishing each other's sentences. They know what they're doing, and
Yeah.
teams like that are great, because there are a few things that only salespeople do, and that's normally pricing, negotiations, legal contract stuff. There are normally only things that a sales engineer might do, which is complex technical setup and some technical discovery and a bit of business discovery. And there's usually the set of tasks in the middle where either of them can do it.
Yeah.
And that's where the magic comes in, is the two individuals working together and figure out who's best at it.
Right.
And the example that I cite is, 20 years ago when I started up the company, the mantra usually was, you're the sales engineer, you just go talk to the techies and maybe the techies manager. And that's it. You don't talk to anybody else. Right? And the account exec and sales manager and director and VP would deal with senior IT executives and the line of business people. And that's old style selling 20 years ago. What happens now is you look at who's the best person to build a relationship with this executive at the customer. So it's not unusual in most parts of the world, and there are cultural issues, to see a 26-year-old SE sitting in front of a 52-year-old CEO or CFO having that conversation. So titles don't matter as much now as who's the best person to build that relationship and who has the knowledge and expertise to apply.
Yeah.
So I think that's part 2 of my answer, and part 3 is salespeople are always improving too.
Yes.
And a chunk of the sales job, just like a chunk of the pre-sales job, is being automated. So the low end part of the job is being automated. On our side, on the SE side, you can now generate RFP responses automatically. There's a great deal of demo automation.
Yeah.
So that applies to salespeople as well. So salespeople, they need to hone their craft and become a little better at objection handling and generating leads and all that standard sales stuff. But they need to understand the technology a little better, and not the speeds and feeds and the bits and bytes, but how their technology solves business problems. And the more they know about that, I think the better they become as salespeople. So that's a very long-winded answer to no, sales is not disappearing. Sales engineering has changed over the last 20 years, way more than the sales job has. And I think that's a good thing, because now as an SE, we're being asked to be more consultative, more business-oriented, more relationship-oriented, but still those technical skills are the foundation of everything that we do.
I love your answers. I genuinely love all your answers because, and I love the analogy as well, where you mentioned about the marriage part. And
Mhm,
it's like, we are always being rotated and paired up with some A or the other. But maybe you're right. It's like a marriage when we just finish each other's sentences, when we just look at each other and we know, okay, I'll handle this part, you take care of it, and something like
mhm.
that. So it is marriage, but it also made me realize that maybe the definition of marriage has also changed. So maybe your answer is still pretty valid. But
Yes, yeah,
yeah,
you're absolutely
the
right.
analogy is
Yeah.
very well goes through decades, and it speaks of the volume of the experience that you have, and uh, not just the childlike demeanor and face, but it's also about the childlike inquisitiveness that you have, that you have been changing and evolving yourself. And while that was a little rhetorical question as well, because as an SE, there is so much always to learn,
Mhm,
be it soft skills, be it hard skills, or whatever we want to call them, from technical aspects to everything. So this makes absolute perfect sense that if there's a good blend of both of them, there is a maybe a bifurcation, like, okay, these are the things you will handle, these are the things I'll handle, stuff like that. It makes our jobs very easier and the relationship a little amicable, if I were to say.
mhm. It is. And to cite one more piece of research here before we move on, we
Please.
also, a while back, with one of our clients in a consulting company, we surveyed almost 2,500 mid to senior level executives in like Fortune 1000 size companies around the world. And we said, what are the skills that you value most in your vendor's pre-sales team, to use the generic terminology? And they came back with 5 main responses. So the first one was someone who understands my business.
Perfect. Yeah.
So for example, if you're selling to a pharmaceutical company,
Mhm.
um, do you understand the concept of research and development and clinical trials and new drug applications? I mean, not the minutiae, but enough to just to speak their business language. So that was number one. Number two was someone who can clearly and effectively communicate with me.
Mm,
Because it's no good being technically brilliant if you can't explain it.
absolutely.
Number three was someone I can trust to do the right thing for me and my company, right?
Oh,
The trusted advisor. Number four was someone who can design innovative solutions with my staff. So 2 key words there, right? One is innovative, and the second one is with, right? Not for my staff, but with my staff. And then number five, surprisingly enough, was someone who has deep technical knowledge.
yep.
Now you might think that would be number one, right? But actually it isn't. It's table stakes. So now the expectation is that you as an SE have deep technical knowledge, or you can go get it somewhere else in your organization and bring it to bear on that client. And those other 4 things I mentioned have now been layered on top to make you the complete sales engineer. And I think that's pretty cool. And it shows how the position has changed over, not just the last 20 years, but even the last 5 years. And what's such a fun job to have.
It is. It is. There is no single day where you feel like, okay, you're doing a repetitive task,
Yeah.
right? Like every client is new. In fact, if you're meeting different teams from the same company, even they are different, like
Yes.
every bunch of people is different, and it doesn't feel like that the roller coaster ever ends. It's just like a new twist, a new turn, and you're going to hit that bump in the road, but always fascinating. And I want to understand from you, given the fact that I have also seen, like, you are one such great example of being an MD of your own company, given the
Mhm.
fact that SEs, maybe if not perfect and good, like we were talking a little while earlier, what if they eventually master this art, like you master any other skill, you master any other quality, they become good in both aspects, like from business, sales, marketing, plus the technical aspect. Do you think a good growth for them would be becoming a CEO? Maybe not immediately, but
Mhm.
somewhere down the line, they can turn up to become good CEOs of companies.
Uh, Absolutely. Again, one of the great things about being a sales engineer is you are exposed to so many different aspects of both your own company and your clients' companies.
Yeah.
I often say a sales engineer sales engineers are the oil that drives the engine of sales.
Mhm.
And actually, sales engineers are really the oil that drives the entire company. So I don't think there's any other position within an organization that touches so many others. I mean, you touch sales, you touch marketing, you touch product management, product marketing, development, engineering, support,
Yeah.
even HR and legal and finance sometimes, scary as that might sound. So you get exposure to a lot of things. And if that's where your interest lies, then certainly you can pick up management and leadership experience. You have the technical background. You build up the salesy background, because you do need that as a CEO. You build up some of the other professional business skills, and it puts you in a great position. If you look out there now and expand the marketplace a little bit and talk about sales engineers and product managers, there's some big names out there that started off being techies. Mark Benioff. I remember Mark Benioff over 30 years ago being booed off the stage at Oracle when he was doing a demo to us when he was a product manager for Oracle on the Macintosh. Right? So Larry Ellison, Tom Siebel, Sohaib Abbasi. There's a bunch of people just here in the US who started off with a technical background who then become great salespeople and CEOs and a well-known name. So that there's no reason that a sales engineer can't dream of doing that and starting their own company and big. Why not?
And while we are talking about the graduation or the progression from SE to CEO, I didn't realize that I need to ask you this as well. Where does a person start to getting into a SE role? I had not planned that I would be getting into one, and there might be many people, maybe even youngsters who are still in their college. Do you think it's good to have some experience, some years of experience in the actual, the technical job and stuff like that, and then progress into SE? Or yes, we can definitely train SEs right from the first out of school or out of college experience. What do you think is a good mix for both the person as well as the company?
So I will give you the classic sales engineering answer, which is it depends. So I do not believe there is any longer a need to have that experience before you become a sales engineer. And that's driven by just the changing needs of the marketplace and the fact that sales engineering is a hot profession right now.
Oh, yeah.
I think Vivin came out with a report and said there's about 1.7 million of us globally. Who knew? And that number is growing faster than the employment rate in any country in the world. So it is a really great job to have. So that said, it used to be the fact that you needed some business and technical experience before people hire you as a sales engineer. No longer the case. So my view is mainly of the US and Western Europe, but there are now organizations that take people at the undergraduate level, so 18, 19, 20-year-old quote kids who are studying either engineering or marketing, and teach them about sales engineering. Now, which you think about it is the mix between the two, and then recruit them as they leave university and put them into an associate sales engineer position, and then flip them around the company for 18 months in different positions and see where they best fit. Actually, there's several companies in India that do that, some of the really large tech companies. So they have a graduate intake program. There's organizations starting up here in the US. There's something called the Pre-Sales Academy, and they now take people who want to become sales engineers. And I look back at my 3 decades plus of hiring SEs, and goodness, I've hired thousands of them, and the backgrounds have been amazing. I have hired a Shakespearean scholar, all the way through to literally a rocket scientist from NASA.
Wow.
So it really doesn't matter what your background is. If you have attitude, you have curiosity, the ability to learn, and at least a sprinkling of technical and business / professional skills, you can do this job with training.
Absolutely.
The issue that we face, Shruti, is it is one of the best kept secrets in the world, because everybody who is in sales engineering now, other than people who've just gone through this academy, got there by accident, right? You did. I certainly did. You talk to anybody who's been an SE for more than 3 years, and they say, "Oh, it's an accidental profession. I just fell into it, or someone told me about it, or someone recruited me into it."
Right. But
we need to do a better job of marketing it, I think.
I want to add to this that all of us who accidentally fell into this, nothing in life is accident, right? We were probably destined to do something of the sort. We were being trained all our profession before that.
Yep.
all our technical journeys or whatever journeys we had, maybe the Shakespearean journey to the rocket science, but
Yeah.
some way or the other, we were gravitating to do a greater good to all. And I would like to call out two things like out loud. First is SEs are not just demo engineers. Like I felt like saying this out loud. We are not just demo engineers.
Yes.
I hope you understand this through this podcast. And I'm just so happy that you and I mean, I think we think alike, and I'm so fortunate that all the answers that you were giving were making sense to me somewhere deep down that, okay, I was doing the right things, not just for the company, but also for the client. And there were times, when I used to feel I'm getting paid by this company, but I'm supposed to be doing the job for these guys. So it's a very, very
Yeah.
lethal position to be in, but because I'm wanting the best for the client, and I'm getting back to my product manager saying, if this doesn't get done, it's not going to happen and stuff like that. So it totally makes sense. And while I don't feel like wrapping up this podcast or this conversation with you, I want to understand if there are any parting thoughts you would have for us, for people in India who would be wanting to get into solutions engineering or being just inspired by the fact that there is an option like this.
No. So I think inspiration there is a really good word. I'm a big believer in if you don't ask, you don't get. So if this is a job that sounds like it is of interest to you, don't be shy. Be a little bit aggressive. Because remember, ultimately, you are dealing with salespeople, right? Your partners are going to be salespeople. Salespeople love to be sold. Right? Salespeople don't want a quiet, passive, sales engineer who sits in the back of the room and does nothing. They want someone who's got a bit of personality and will speak. So don't be afraid to show that. And most hiring managers are going to look for attitude. They're going to look for curiosity. They are going to look for intelligence and communication skills. You have those. The other stuff can be learned. So if you're looking for a job that is different every day, and you're going to learn something, there's very little routine. Sales engineering is the job for you. If you're looking for a job where you run your world by spreadsheets and Excel, and you have lists of everything to do, it's not the job for you, because it will drive you crazy, because it's a very open-ended job. It's got enough sales in it that you feel that the thrill of victory, right, and the agony of defeat when you lose a deal.
Yes.
So you get that competitive thing as well. So my advice is go for it. I mean, there's programs now in colleges and universities. There's the pre-sales academy. Even mid-sized tech companies now have these SE academies.
Right.
And they will bring on and onboard people and then teach them the skills, because the need is there. There's not enough sales engineers in the world.
No.
I think someone told me there's 40,000 open positions just in the US. The US is typically 50% of the SE market. So extrapolate that, there's 80,000 open positions in the world.
Wow, that's a huge gap to fill.
Take one of them. And you know what? The job pays really well. I mean, it pays you much better than being a network engineer or
developer,
something like that. Yeah. So take it.
Absolutely. You didn't have to say that. Now everybody knows we get paid. I hope we bridge that gap. There are certain things due to the cross-cultural things, and I hope we cross that barrier. But yeah, it's a good job to have, learn many skills with a decent pay. Why not? Thank you so much, John. This has been such an insightful conversation, and for the first time, I mean, I've spoken to a couple of other folks on the podcast, different kinds of guests, but when you find another solutions engineer to talk to, and it felt like a heart-to-heart conversation, it genuinely felt so nice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I enjoyed this. I love spreading the word, and it looks like you do as well. And I have to say, one of the things that's always struck me about India, and I've been to India, I think half a dozen times delivering workshops and classes, is actually India does a much better job of having a diverse group of sales engineers than almost anywhere else. I mean, in terms of gender, I think the proportion of women in sales engineering in India is actually one of the highest in the world, which is fantastic. I mean, because it's horrible here in the US. Whatever you're doing, I think you're on the right track over there. So it's phenomenal.
Thank you for that last note of appreciation. I'm pretty sure it means a lot to all of us.
Yeah.
Thank you.